Well, Jerry and I are old friends, but I don't know how to spell his name right. I've been trying to convince him to change it because that would make it so much easier, but he's not willing to do it. Jerry has probably led as interesting a life as anybody I've ever known. Early in his life, he lost his dad. His mom sold the farm. Jerry moved to Tampa, and his interesting life started. He, as a teenager, went to welding school, went to Jacksonville, worked in the shipyard, bought a mobile roller skating rink, and he can tell you stories about setting that up all around the state. Ended up, right after the war, going down to Key West, enlisted in the Air Force, or maybe
Army Air Corps still then, but it was changing over, yeah.
And had a full career in the Air Force, and he served some remote tours. And when you do this, you really become a great storyteller, because if you're sitting up on the Arctic Circle, looking at a radar screen, repairing one or whatever, you have a lot of time. And to show you just how great a storyteller he is, twice we drove to postcard shows up the East Coast. I was driving. I missed the turnoff by like 20 miles. Had to turn around and come back. And that's twice in a row. Because when Jerry starts talking, and he really has interesting things to say. So I'll step aside and introduce my friend, Jerry Wilkinson.
Well, thank you, Bob. Well, it has been a busy life. I can't think of anything that I would really do over, including the military. I was one of those that went into the military and liked it. You know, I liked structure. I liked to know who my bosses were, you know, and not hidden behind some innocent face or so forth. And I liked that structure. Pay wasn't so good. The Social Security wasn't very good because we only got taxed on, Social Security on our base pay, which is about half of our pay. So in time 65 coming along, the Social Security wasn't that good. Of course, didn't pay in much either. I don't think we started paying until 1955. I want to apologize for this show because it's not one of my better shows. I have something going on in my brain on tinnitus. I had to stop working on the computer. This program, the slides on this program, is just as it was when I called Ruth that I was having a problem. I didn't want to cancel. So she said, bring it as it is. That's it. And that's what I did. It was already in a draft version. So the slides, I could do a lot better than job. You can do a lot better job. Bob could do a lot better. Harris could do a lot better job than this. But I'd like to encourage those like Bob Harris to interject and let us make this program. Those people who were here, when I say something wrong, I'm reading this stuff, I'm researching it. I was in the Air Force. A lot of this was going on. I'm in Spain. Oh, we were setting up a radar to protect General Franco in Spain from the Berlin crisis and so forth. So I wasn't here when C-Day and all this stuff was going on. And as a matter of fact, didn't return to the 70s, and then I was in Alaska. So I knew very little about this. It already happened, and Biscayne National Monument was already created by the time I got here. So with the apology, keep this in mind. But if you do know something, you're not going to hurt you're going to help me because Doug LaRue is filming it, and he's going to give me a copy, and I want to update what I do not have, and I especially want to know what I have wrong. You know, some people don't want to know that when they don't want to be told they're wrong. I want to be told and informed that I'm wrong, especially because I'm going to probably pass it on to somebody. And this is where we get bad history. It's nobody wants to tell the author something, you know, he's wrong, and so it kept perpetuating the wrong story. Let me see where's the best place to stand. Right there. I'm talking about the second Causeway. The program started to be about Atlanta. I'm in your way, aren't I? Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know if this, it started out to be about Islandia, but I didn't have enough documentation. I'm one of these that want documentation to show something and not just make it up or take it hearsay. And I think in the Keys we get a lot of hearsay stuff. So you better go look for some documentation. I didn't find a lot of documentation because Luther Brooks, I think, didn't let any of his documentation out, or he didn't have any documentation. But we do have some of it. So I'm going to go through here in my spastic, this from originally starting, and I'm going to try to keep it in chronological order. I think a few of the slides just slipped out of chronological order. But I'd kind of like to go back in Bob Harris's area about the survey when the keys out there, the Ragged Key, Soldier Key, Elliott's Key, Sands Key, Arsenical Keys, when those, we call them upper keys. Bob?
I was here during this, and there was a lot of controversy, and everybody was calling each other liars. So any documentation you get, you should view with suspicion.
Well, I know that, but I've got the documentation, and I sent the Florida Archives. They sent me 172 pages of documentation on Islandia and seed aid, and there's a bunch of letters opposing or congratulating them, you know, urging Governor Bryant and people to move ahead with this project. Others saying we're going to kill you if you deal with this, and it's the typical conservationist versus developer that we in the Keys experience all the time. And we lived it out with Port Bougainville, we lived it and so forth. The height restrictions, you know, for the building. So I know that feeling. And we had other things like Aerojet going on. And I know the people here know of Aerojet, the missile testing place, and then the airport out in the Glaze Airport. A lot of things was going on. Government was spending a lot of money down here, and they're spending it everywhere, I guess. But they seem to be spending a lot of it down in southeast Florida. And I have one little clipping in here where they were putting in a water desal plant on Sugarloaf Key. And I'll show you the clip. And there is very little documentation on this, but I have it out of the newspaper, and it come in when I went to the Key West Citizen, stayed about a month, and then faded away, and never another mention about this nuclear water. 10 million gallons a day, I believe. My memory is also getting kind of better. So let's go on. The idea of a causeway going up the Keys did not start with Islandia. It had been going on somewhere. This is September 1945, and somewhere in here they say this is the second. The principal question, forget exactly where, but it was already, this is not the first mention of a causeway. If you could read the article, you'll find out that there have been further meetings before that. I think George Merrick, and I've read of George Merrick proposing the Rickenbacker Causeway when he was building Coral Gables to bridge across where Rickenbacker is today for an oceanside resort for Coral Gables. Now, that's not all the way to Key Largo, but that would have been in the 1920s when he was the Florida land boom. That would have been the start of it.
In 1926, it was proposed to do a causeway across there.
Good, 1926.
1926.
And you heard this? You were here?
I've read it in
enough places. No. And this is what I like to do. I like to find 3 newspapers giving me the same source, because I know I read newspapers today, and can I tell what's going on today in the country from the newspapers? Well, I can't. I know if you can. Or if you get extreme ways, I don't know. But if I can find 3 newspapers giving me the same story, then I start considering it. I prefer to find the original documentation, like I'll show you part of it, the Luther Brooks on the Islandia development of his, which I found the entire booklet put together with the drawings for all the bridges and all the causeways and everything, and his proposal, a lot of stuff, but I won't show you, just a lot of stuff to show. But anyway, the point is, this is not a story about Islandia. It's kind of a second causeway going down to the Keys. And I can understand, and I bet there was people here who might have been in Homestead that may not have wanted a bypass. Certain business people probably didn't want another bypass route to go down into the Keys, who depended on US 1 being the only route and the traffic up and down US 1, because we like the Homestead in a way. The people driving out on US 1 do not stop in Key Largo. The majority of them are going to Key West. Their budget is set up to spend their money in Key West, and we've built museums on Key Largo and so forth. They drive right on by and spend their money down in the oldest house, you know, and Little White House of Truman's, and that's where the money goes. And a lot of it went right through Homestead, too. But if it was going through the ocean side, they wouldn't even have a chance of anybody. They wouldn't stop and get gas. I think you do get people getting gas here that's afraid of what the prices are going to be down in the Keys. And I've heard that from a lot of the tourists that drive through, that they gas up here in Homestead because they just don't know. The planners, this is Dade County planners. We're used to seeing planners, we think of Monroe County. I do, because I'm from Monroe County. But the planners are connecting Key Biscayne to Key Largo, and this is 51. 1951, so at that time they're going Key Biscayne to Key Largo. Later we'll have a proposal to go from Miami Beach, which did not last long at all, because he had to go through the they didn't have the bridges to get to Miami Beach. And they're going to put in a 4-lane causeway down the Key, and they had very poor transportation of causeways in Miami Beach. Nothing like we have today. This is a newspaper clip in no way you can read, so I've broken this up into pieces. But I just wanted to show you the whole article that had come out in the Miami Herald, and I like the map of it. And throughout here, I've been looking for maps that have boundaries and something to tell us about this causeway. This is the northern part of the map. So Mary, is that in focus correctly back there? As you see here, they're talking about this, they're coming across proposed bridge linking Rickenbacker Causeway to Key Largo. And this would have been the route on this is 1951. The top half of that map. Oh, Rickenbacker, yeah, you're right. This is Rickenbacker, here it is. Rickenbacker across the Key Biscayne. And then there was a problem with this route, though, that when they built the Rickenbacker Causeway, there was a clause in the bond issue that said there could be no other bridges connecting Key Biscayne. And this got ignored until it went to the courts. And then is when they had to change over to Black Point, the southern route. But that was the point that they overlooked, and I saw a lot of things in here that they're simply overlooking, that Dade County had a park on Elliott's Key all the time for a long time. The southern end of Elliott's Key was the property of Dade County, designated as a park. They didn't man it, they didn't run it as a park. But Bob, did you run in that when you did your survey?
Yeah, it's all that part.
Yeah, Bob Harris did the actual survey. So I'm counting on him correcting me and helping me. He actually 63, 64?
Yeah, in 63, 64, we did the right-of-way survey, the extension 905 from the intersection of US 1 on Key Largo with the curve is all the way up to Soldier Key and Key Biscayne. So that was done to the road department and to acquire all that right-of-way from there. Went through Ocean Reef, actually in 63 and 64 that happened. And we also did the survey from the Cartsound Road and the bridge, replacement of the bridge, which was reopened the traffic in July of 67. And we surveyed all those parcels. We retraced M.A. Williams' 1874 surveys. And I have proof that those surveys were fraudulent because he shows that he did all the surveys in North Key Largo and Elliott Key in a period of about 6 weeks. It's impossible in those days, 1874, to do that because mangroves stopped him. He shows that he ran lines across the mangroves. Lake Surprise was called Lake Surprise because it was a big surprise when they found it. Because reading survey shows that he set lighterwood stakes at the section corners where out in the middle of Lake Surprise. So it was a fraudulent survey, but we had to go use it, so we had to retrace it the best we could. It was a big job.
There must have been a nightmare because the history of the surveys, which I did get into more than I knew I was going to get into. Does anyone know who Dr. Joe Konech is? He's a Tallahassee man in the Bureau of Surveying and Mapping. And he has near photographic memory. He sees something, he remembers it. And he got onto it, and he loves surveying. And so
he's written several books.
Several books.
Indian Wars and surveys in Florida and all.
Fantastic writer. I mean, he's done the survey, and he sent me a lot of information on how they improved the survey, especially the one that Flagler surveyor but skip my mind now. That's the same guy that designed Miami, the platted the Miami, the streets and everything in Miami, they hired to survey Ragged Keys, the 6 of them. And they paid him $57, so you can guess about how much surveying you're going to get for $57 even back then. It was 1898 for the survey. Totally, I mean, really wrong. The section lines wasn't even numbered correctly and so forth. And then they hired another surveyor who was from the government surveying land office to straighten out his. The history of the surveying alone is interesting, but this is not what we're trying to talk about tonight. We wanted to see whatever happens to this proposed causeway, and the dashed lines, of course, would mean that it was proposed. Let's look at the bottom half. Same newspaper back there 2 slides ago. This is the bottom half of the survey. And the main thing I just want to show here is the Monroe County line coming about Palo Alto Key. So they're planning this road all the way to Key Largo, and the 905, what we know as 905, was to be 4-lane also, right through Ocean Reef was to be surveyed. And they made a lot of trouble, spent a lot of money to stay away from the people and so forth, be a getaway in their own private fishing places. And then they were going to eminent domain, a 120-foot right-of-way through Ocean Reef, which Bob did the survey through Ocean Reef. But they were really behind the scenes, and this is part of it. I can't get how they were interacting. I did find some of, I think Harper Sibley was one of the letters I got from the Florida Archives. And they all said the same thing, do it or don't do it. And then they give their reasons why not doing it. The airstrip in Ocean Reef, if anybody pilots in here, to land at Ocean Reef, you have to land by the north-south runway. Side and wind. Every landing and takeoff is side wind almost. It had it lined up east and west, but the survey that Harris went through put it right to the right, and they had to turn their east-west runway around, well, it's northeast, south, southwest, this way, because the right-of-way was coming through here and would have come through their runway.
They actually acquired the right-of-way.
They acquired the right-of-way.
And they finally sold it back to Ocean Reef.
And sold it back to them. What entity acquired it? Who?
State Road Department.
The state, SRD, State Road Department. So they acquired it. Boy, I can say the Ocean Reef was.
You know, there was another airport planned from North Carolina.
Yeah.
Between the 2 missile bases.
Yeah.
The missile base at the intersection of Cartown Road, and that's the control site, and the launch site was to the south of there. There was a line of sight easement between the 2 of them that was clear. It was about 100 foot wide, and it was about 3/4 of a mile between those 2 sites. And we, the county commission, the Monroe County Commission, Ken Sorensen, and Jerry, a bunch of them, we went up to Washington to get Danny Cassell to support it, and he initially supported it, to build a jet port at that point. Danny Johnson and all the environmentalists shot it down.
Yeah, well, the Upper Keys Citizens Association, which, by the way, I was a part of. But much later, it was already shot down, that part of it was. So I mean, we just kind of get an idea of where Monroe County, but Islandia is doing the planning without talking to Monroe County at this particular time. Monroe County apparently didn't know, or they didn't want to know, or maybe because Harry Harris, in Monroe County at the time, they did not have a county administrator. There weren't enough people. So each county commissioner took an assignment for a job. One took finance, one took beaches and parks, and one. Everybody, each commissioner had to do every job in the county. Personnel, everything had to be done by a county commissioner. Harry Harris, which was the District 5, Key Largo, was the roads commissioner. And he was the one that built the road. He's the one that got Tavernier the 4-lane highway because his office was right in the middle of the 4-lane highway in Tavernier. And that was the only place we'll get to later that got 4-lane, that really got 4-lane. We're talking about 4-laning a lot, but not any doing. Okay, let's try to move on. Here's 4 of the proposals. There were a lot of proposals made, but here's are 4 of them that I've been able to trace out. One of them in 19, it was called Key Largo Ocean Drive, Inc. And it had the support of the Dade County Board of County Commissioners. And it went from Key Biscayne to Key Largo. I don't know what would have happened to Cape Florida. Does anybody know when Cape Florida became a state park? I just should have looked that up, because that's where it was going to take off to, right by the lighthouse there. Another one is Joel Hurt. He proposing a privately financed toll road. Of course, money was the big problem all along to build a causeway that's mostly fill, and it has to stabilize and be stratified so you can run vehicles over it. The Dade County referred this one to the State Road Department to study. But they liked the idea, if you read the whole article, they liked the idea of the public going out and getting the money out of the industry and having industry furnish the money, and they get a road. Another one was the Elliott Key Improvement Association, and this was in 1957, Harold, and they was going to go from Miami Beach to Key Largo. And they would have ran into the same problem when they tried to cross Key Biscayne with an entry road and an exit road, and because of the bond issue on the Rickenbacker Causeway. And then Dade County and Monroe County, they got together in 57 to extend the Palmetto Expressway from where it is now up about 120th Street, southwest, down across the housing area, Kings Bay and all the rest, not Kings Bay, further south than that. Old Cutler, across Old Cutler, and I have a map in here that shows you basically the expressway. So Monroe County was into the thing with proposals, and we know there are a lot of proposals that never happened. So proposals does not manifest itself, but rarely. Okay. I want to bring into something that few people know about. And I wonder how many in here know about Daniel Ludwig. He was a billionaire supertanker guy. He invented, I say invent, invented tank. He created the entire world of oil tankers. After World War II, he worked to deal out with Japan because the United States corporate taxes, we've heard this right now, the corporate tax rate was too high in the United States. Ludwig was, there was a picture of him, but Ludwig was from Michigan, I believe, in South Haven, Michigan. He went and made a deal with Japan with our help, and Japan's government was, after World War II, was nothing, and leased the entire Navy yard for their aircraft carriers in Japan. Deep water, big yards and so forth, and Japan was eager for the American dollars, and this guy, Daniel Keith Ludwig, had a financial brain, and he could work with other people's money better than anyone. Well, he became a billionaire before being a billionaire was even known about. And he owned so many more tankers than Onassis. Onassis was just a small pea in a pod compared to this, and remained completely out of the public eye. Would not allow his name to be on any of the corporate list. He was on the board of directors of all of it. Did not allow one interview. And he wrote the book I'll show you later on. Oh, here it is, it's already here. Invisible Billionaire by Jerry Shields. He was the only man that interviewed him. He walked to work every day. And the operator did not know of a person. There was nobody employed when somebody called by the name of Daniel Ludwig. There's nobody in the telephone directory. The business, the company telephone directory. The company, I don't have it up here. In the U.S., about the only thing he did, he built a 50,000 population Westlake building in California. We never have gotten why he spent that money in the United States, because he was not spending until he was going to do it here in C-Dade. So then Daniel Ludwig didn't come down, the C-Dade company did. Here was kind of the way he bought the 18,000 acres east of Homestead Air Force Base. East Homestead Air Force Base, he bought all the land east of Homestead over this area, and I'll show you a better map in a minute. This is across featherbed banks, and I believe Homestead has no featherbed banks. The Key Largons don't know, because they don't fish out the featherway. And it's too shallow to fish in, first of all. But anyway, he was going to use all this canal. It was going to be 30-foot deep canal and a 40-foot deep port. And this is what he starts out with in his proposal to Dade County here. And nothing mentioned about an oil refinery. It was just going to be a seaport. And people were clamoring, the county was. This is more taxes, industrial taxes, drawing in millions of people. The only oil refinery on the East Coast, and he had the money, and they knew he could build it. And but he himself remained out of the public eye. But Islandia incorporated on December 7th, 1960. I believe there were 18 voted property owners, and 15 others, I think, or 13 voted for it to incorporate. And Luther Brooks became the mayor, and some other people of the city council, and they become a municipality. Does anybody remember when Islandia finally was thrown out and kicked out of incorporation? March 2012. Yeah. March of this year, they had a meeting of the county commissioners to de-incorporate because they didn't want to have to keep the stuff on their official roads and so forth, because they weren't getting any money from them. It was Biscayne National Park, but it took till this year. And we can do some, and we had some down in the Keys, like the city of North Key Largo Beach, that did the same thing with having a little government and so forth that really never done anything. Okay, another. Been looking on the map I can find. It shows the actual city limits. And Bob, I don't know if these would stand a serious survey for the boundary lines, but they always show this Elliott's Key and they show the keys in here, but they didn't put any boundary line. I can't say this is right, but it kind of looks pretty good to me. This area looks like the Palo Alto, Swan Key area, but you notice it does not go up and pick up Soldier Key. It does not go further north. It does not. It did have 33 keys, but some of them just a speck come out of the water. The major one was LS Key, of course. Sands Key was a pretty large key, but didn't have any elevation to have on it. But Ragged Keys did have. Ragged Key number 5, we'll see more of. So they did do some work on that. Okay. Come on, Shannon. I made a big mistake here. I cut off the front part of this article. I meant to show it in 2 parts, but I didn't. It was telling about who Luther Brooks, the mayor of Islandia, was. He was a Miami slumlord. He owned millions and millions of dollars of poor properties up around, especially up in the black sections and so forth of Miami-Dade. And he did set up his own, here was the voters, 27 residents, 18 more than 14 eligible voters, so forth. But they did have 342 property owners. Up here it told the whole story. The part that I'd forgotten didn't say. They did have their sheriff and so forth. And the sheriff got heard from quite a bit. But it just tells about this Luther Brooks guy. He built a city hall of Mainland, I forget, on 7th Street and 7th Avenue or something. Had a meeting hall, and he would have meetings by himself. You know. And there was no sunshine law that we have today. He would have the meetings by himself, or they would, and he had, I think, seats for 62 people. Big, huge table. And the picture that I did not save up here was him sitting at this big table by himself, you know, at a meeting. Didn't show much, but it was this October 28, 1962. You can get back into the old Miami Herald. Okay, this is starting some of the official drawings for the proposed causeway and bridges over Biscayne Bay between Black Point and Sands Key. Black Point being up, I think that's Black Point right there. But the causeway, a series of causeway, then a bridge, causeway, then a bridge, causeway, then a bridge, causeway, then a coastal waterway, causeway and a bridge, and so forth. The series of causeways, doing what I think, from watching Flagler do it in the Keys, building a dam basically across, you know, Biscayne Bay, horizontal dam across it. Because when you see that these bridges are not very wide for water to flow. Now, there's not deep water in here to flow much anyway, except during a hurricane there'd be a lot. And it come into Sands Key, this one. A Ragged Key, these would be Ragged Key up here, this is LX Key, and on down to Monroe County. Okay. This is one of the details on this series of maps in the charter. This is the top view looking down at A bridge. This is just A bridge. There's going to be a whole series of these. Type A bridge. And they had type B bridge, and they had a type C bridge, which was a 65-footer to go over for Ludwig Seedade's canal. And this is the side view of how they were going to put the abutments and so forth up, and the elevation to go up over the bridges. See what else I put in here. This is still part of the same proposal, and I just showed this down at Monroe County end. There's about 15 sheets with all kinds of drawings. Here's a Monroe County crossing over up into Palo Alto Key from Swan Key. So this is the way, but they carried the bridge on down to Key Largo in the Monroe County without realizing the two counties have to get together on something. And that's hard to do a lot of times, to get two counties to totally agree on something that require a lot of bond money and put them in liable, you know, with the bonding companies of who's going to pay the bonds off. It was always going to be a toll road, though. And this is where the problem, and I'll tell you more about this later. Another side issue was up here, which the Homestead folk knew about Aerojet facility out here, C-111 Canal, for the testing of the solid missile for the rockets, thrusters and so forth. And they did test too, didn't they?
They did test them.
Yeah, they did actually test a bit the C-111 Canal so they could barge them in. It was a huge operation. It didn't last very long. Had something like 16,000 acres of Everglades land out there, which they traded off, I believe, to California. They actually moved, Aerojet, I think, still exists, if I'm not mistaken. But they moved out west to do waste disposal, the burning type, solid waste disposal. But that's just a side issue of another big government development, a lot of dollars being spent.
Where's that?
1963 is when they started. Okay.
It's just outside the gates of Everglades National Park on the south side of the road.
Down by where the Dade Correctional Center.
Still there.
Yeah, and it's still there. I think you did some of some.
Yeah, I produced and directed the film on it.
Produced and directed the film on Aerojet.
You can see the whole thing?
Do you have a copy of what?
Yes.
Okay.
Several here.
Yeah. There was another one, of course, later on that's going to be out in the Everglades, the jet port. They was going to replace Miami International with the one, but this is still a little bit early for that one. The governor gets behind the project here. They run it up to him, and the governor proposes himself and endorses a new superhighway down the island chain, 1964. This brings a different issue that the state now is willing to do some of its bond finessing and so forth and grant monies. We know. We got good hindsight because we know nothing ever happened of it. But I'm just trying to fill in some of the stages that they did go through. This is Governor Bryant, and it's in Miami. He told this in Miami Beach. So this is a talk about that Governor Bryant now is behind the Causeway. So it's getting serious when the state of Florida and the state road department starts doing a 4-lane highway, and it was going to be 6 lanes on Elliott's Key. And this is some of the proposal. They don't tell you the 6 lanes is only going to be on Elliott's Key, but that's the way it really was. Here's a resolution. Following this is a resolution in approval of development of public recreational facilities in the city of Islandia. And this was a resolution that they passed. You do this in government. You pass a resolution, whereas and let it be resolved too. And they drew up, it's April '64, and they drew up some plans. And here is the part of the resolution. The president of the Chamber of Commerce is doing this, a resolution, be it back and so forth, to do the bridge. And I'm going to show you some of the details, I hope, and you can't read it, it's too small. But this is some of the actual details of the Causeway and in the center of the island. They're talking about Elliott's Key, the scenic Ocean Drive, the 6 lanes, that 4 lanes are going to go down the middle of Elliott's Key, and 2 lanes are going to go down the ocean side. And I'll show you a map of the 2 lanes, proposed 2 lanes, the scenic drive. Big promotion to the fishermen to have this, and beachgoers, like Rickenbacker used to be. I can remember back in the 70s going out to Rickenbacker under the palm trees, you know, and having picnic lunches and so forth with a pumped-in sand beach. And this is why they were going to have this scenic highway, and big sale of the scenic highway. The only place you was going to be able to get out and walk, though, was on Elliott's Key. They was going to pump, and I'll show you in a minute. This is the part of their map for the development plan, leaving from up by Black Key, going over Sands Key, Elliott's Key, on down into Monroe County, and it was supposed to go right on down to mile marker 106. If you know where that is, Jewfish Creek, you know, on Key Largo. Cartown was 905. 14 miles of it was to be in Monroe County. And Monroe County don't have as money that even that Dade County to think about doing this. This is what I hope to remember to tell the rest of this. The business of the toll. These are renderings that you see when developers, people do this kind of work. They give you these renderings of the road coming, scenic highway. This is the middle part, which would be corresponding here, and this over here would be the scenic drive part. This is the cross section of, they don't even tell you, they just say a typical section. It's Elliott's Key. Well, they don't say it here anywhere. And this is the part that kind of amazed me, the state park. And I find no evidence of the state park systems getting involved in this. There might be, just because I can't find it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I didn't see the Florida Park Service going one way or the other in the Islandias, Causeway, or Dade, or any of that. But, and I don't know where they are just because they wrote it here. A draftsman can put this on. This is the top view of the 4 lanes that was going through the center of Elliott's Key. This is Elliott's Key, Oceanside and Cartown side. Here's the scenic highway would go along, and there'd be cross connections where you could get off of this to go here, or get back on if you were driving the scenic highway. So the development was going. It was going full post. And here's the last part of it, of the resolution that was respectively submitted by Luther Brooks and Beland and Maxey. I've only seen these members of the council, so I'm led to believe, Bob, that they only had 3 council members in Islandia. Is that correct?
That's all I heard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they didn't have 5, 7, and so forth like Monroe. How many commissioners does Dade County have, Miami-Dade?
13.
13, well, you got a lot of areas. We have 5 in Monroe County, the Upper Keys and the Middle Keys and the Lower Keys, and then the Key West people down there. The Upper Keys actually have 2. Islamorada's in a different district than the island of Key Largo and so forth. Okay, so these are some signatures. I was looking for something with, instead of dashed lines on here, I wanted to see some signatures on the lines, and this is about the only things I really find. And this was an official proposal that Islandia made and signed and ran with it. This is somebody's drawing a lot of alternate routes in the thing. You'll see a number of these. To see, this one here is Islandia's proposal to come this way. This is the state's proposal to come this way, and this is Dade's proposal to come across this way. Like I said at first, there are a lot of proposals and nobody doing anything except keeping John Pennycamp busy writing and keeping Bill Baggs and the Miami News busy writing and their staff. And Bill Baggs and Pennycamp had their writing. Juanita Green and someone was one of the big ones for John Pennycamp, doing their writing for the conservationists. And then the developers had their people who were, and Monroe County had them too. Monroe County was wanting to do this. The citizens now, not the commissioners, they were reluctant. I'll show you on that, but they're reluctant. The citizens, and we had an organization on Key Largo and Marathon, because Marathon wanted that 4-lane to go all the way to Marathon and not stop at Tavernier Creek. And Marathon, I'll show you one of the clippings of their organizations, and they had a former state representative as their president of it. So there's a bunch of politics going on. And I don't know how the developers were working behind the scenes. So this is where Monroe County, there's a lot that led up to this. Monroe County rejected 4 votes to 1. Harry Harris was the one positive vote, 4 votes against for the Monroe-Dade Causeway. And for us in Monroe County, we'd have thought that would have ended the deal, but it didn't. But it really did with the governor. The governor, and they wrote a book, How Monroe County Jeopardized the Rest of the county. And Dade County was quite belligerent about Monroe County not going along with it. The reason they didn't, they were going to build all of the Dade County stuff with toll money. So it was a toll road. They was not going to give a single penny to the toll money to Monroe County for their 14 miles. And Monroe County was going to have to float a bond or something to build their 14 miles of 4-lane, and it had to be 4-lane. Down Card Sound would have been 4-lane highway. And if you went from Monroe County to Dade over this way, you had to pay the toll. Now, they discussed this and finally agreed to let northbound traffic go north without paying the toll. Southbound traffic coming back, you'd either come down US 1 or you pay the toll to come down this way. In other words, they did entice you to at least go down the Ocean Drive and so forth on Ellis Key. But that's later in time, much later than 64, because it's not over just because Monroe County turned it down. To me, it was really because if you didn't have a destination, and they did have one around Arsenical Key, that was on one of these. I'll see if I can see. The Arsenical Keys that went from southern Dade here over out to where the Alania Causeway was. Mary, did I go by that one? Maybe I haven't. I want to just divert a little bit to some 4-lane that was actually happening. Of all this discussion and all these newspaper articles, the only 4-laning that was actually about to happen was through Tavernier. And it was 2.1 miles of 4-lane highway that was going to be built by Harry Harris's office, which was in here somewhere. And he had his bar across the street on the bay side. He had the bar, and he had his office on the ocean side by the theater, which had by then turned the Tavernier Hotel. So they do start building here, 65, proposing a 4-lane highway through Tavernier. And they did start it. The 4-lane got underway in Tavernier, 4-lane and so forth. But this is $300 million statewide. They got the money out of there for the 4-laning. And then it turned into a regular mess. The highways were torn up, and they were trying to direct traffic through a business section. And this was the only place in Tavernier there was 4-laning, is the business part of it. But Tavernier spread out, anyway, from mile marker 92 down to 90 at Tavernier Creek. And some of the parts, anytime you're going to build something, you're going to cause some dust and you're going to cause traffic jam, and this was a part of it. But the big part that Tavernier objected to, but it's taken so long, it took them 2 years to build 2.1 miles of 4-laning. There was two-lane highways already existing there. The railroad right-of-way was a 2-lane highway. The old State Road 4A was the old road, which is now the northbound, and the railroad right-of-way is the southbound. So the roadways existed, but they had a heck of a time trying to build 2.1 miles of 4-lane highway. I don't know what they'd have done out had they did this in Islandia. But anyway, the businessman was pretty well fed up with it. So get away from this. This is the only real picture I have of the Spite Road, Spite Highway, what it became known as, because it had already been rejected, and so they come through, and Bob, this is the part that Bob surveyed these sidelines, and then, what do you say the date of this is, Bob? About? It's undated, I don't know.
Well, 66.
66? That'd be pretty good, because you completed in 64, right?
Well, the
survey part.
The survey was completed, but then we came back later and staked the right-of-way.
To stake it. How much later, you remember?
What?
How much later?
That's probably a year later.
65 then.
Yeah.
Don't know the whole story of this. We know now that it's a 6-foot wide walking path with Biscayne National Park. That's about all that we actually, K-N-O-W, because that's all that's left of it, a 6-foot walking path through there. But this was an actual picture, and I believe it was from Mr. Stanley, who owned 36 acres of Elliott's Key, and I won't say it's his property now, But there was Aldine Henderson was the daughter of Mr. Stanley, and she was one of our trustees on the Historical Society. And so his Card Sound to Ocean property was split right down the middle of it with this bulldozed area, and it was eminent domain. It was taken from them. And so their property was, they did like their Elliott's Key getaway, as they called it, which was cut in half basically by this. So it did happen, the clearing. That's as far as it got. The next thing is that they get Danny Fussell, Congressman Fussell, into the argument, and Congressman Fussell starts pushing for a Biscayne National Park monument. And this is the only picture I could find, and I don't know if these lines are right, but this was a map made of the proposed Biscayne National Monument. And this didn't happen, of course, until Johnson signed the bill in '68. Let's see where I went from here. The Battle of the Ocean Gym going into Congress. This is when Fussell picks it up to build and Fussell's picking up for the monument, though, and the conservation, the Isaac Walton League, the Sierra Club, and a lot of other groups jumped in here. And my opinion, it's an opinion only, this is what kind of brought the conservation groups together in the southeast Florida to get ready to do things like Port Bougainville and when these things come along. But this was kind of, they got together pretty good for 1957 for Everglades National Park. But there, other than Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and a few, there were not a lot of Miamians really into it. John Pennycamp was, because the Knight brothers told him and gave him a job to get into it. But this kind of brought together a civilian, low working people been working as conservationists. This is an opinion that brought them together, and they keep on going and still going today. The Dagny Johnson people, with Dagny Johnson, Upper Key Citizens Association. Okay. Islandia Road study gets reluctant. This is Monroe County. This is probably out of chronological order. This was March 26, 1964. I've already showed the one where they voted it down, I think, in August. So this is out of order. The Islandia Road, as far as Monroe County is concerned, all were reluctant. That was the board vote. Harry Harris was very pro for it. Now, he's 100% gung-ho ready to build it. But Billy Freeman and Gerald Saunders and other commissioners were, okay, we'll look at it, but we aren't going to jump up and build a causeway. And they weren't going to jump up and bond the county for money to build the causeway. Probably if that private money went through it, they might have done it, but they didn't. Keys Road is dropped. Monroe gets the blame for the flop in the proposal for the scenic highway. And this is the one where they voted August the 6th, 1964, and the keynoter, the Florida Keys keynoter, Marathon, they just backed out because of the funding. So they were not going to participate in the four-laning of the highway. Also, Harry Hatch was having trouble finding money to do it also, because he was doing the four-laning up in Tavernier. He was wanting to get Tavernier where at office. He had to get the money for that. And then he had to go on to mile marker 99, you know, and go into that Jewfish Creek, the four-lane that we have today. Monroe County got the, I want to back up. Monroe County got the blame for sabotaging, you might say, the causeway. It wasn't sabotage. It's still going to be going. This is '64. Bob's just finishing his survey, you know, in '64, and he hadn't went back and restaked it so they could do anything. But Monroe County is backing out pretty quick, and they come back at it again. And we have groups that got together and kept pushing them. And this is my article in the keynoter. April the 16th, 1964, same time all this is going on, of a nuclear-powered water desalination plant in the Florida Keys. And here's a bigger part of it. The Department of Tuesday recommended a 10 million gallon per day plant to be operational by 1967. The plant would be powered by a nuclear reactor with a capacity of 50,000 kilowatts. Kilowatts, that's 50 million watts. This is a kilowatt's 1,000 watts, so this would be that'd be a big power plant. If you read the rest of this, there was going to be one in Tavernier, smaller in 1990. So there was going to be the second nuclear water plant. You know, and I don't know what the Aqueduct Authority, the Florida Keys Aqueduct would have been doing with their pipelines, but they wouldn't have needed it. Okay, this is some of the 4-lane boosters. This is Monroe County. This is the keynoter again. This is Monroe. They're still going to do the 4-laning. And we had a lot of them in Key Largo, a lot of them in Tavernier, and especially in Marathon. That show Fred Tittle was the chairman down in the Marathon area, because they wanted the 4-lane to end in Marathon. It was funny, when they finally did 4-lane, they wouldn't let it go all the way through Marathon. They wouldn't let them 4-lane that very last southern bit, southwestern bit of Marathon, when they did the 4-lane, 72 and so forth. So Monroe County was involved, and the citizens were, but the county commissioners were really unreluctant at that particular time. Another map where the Monroe County jeopardizing the plan proposes a threat, because it had to cross. Here's the Monroe County line coming up here to Palo Alto Key, and it had to cross over and through Ocean Reef and on down 905 and on down US 1. State Road 5. US 1 is called State Road 5 in a lot of designations. And so you recognize some of it. This shows the bottom half. This was the Miami Herald, July 24th, 1967. Bob, you're through with all your service. I think they've already did the Spite Highway up on Ellis Key. Don't know. Islandia Yacht Club, newsletter of the spring of 1968. A Miami developer, Bruce Vining, built Islandia Yacht Club on 7/2/2467. That's Ragged Key number 5. If you're a fisherman, you're familiar with Ragged Keys. There's 6 of them out, and then Ragged Key number 5 has the most land. And I found this newsletter and been holding on to it, not knowing what to do with it. So I scanned part of the newsletter. The next few slides are going to be from the newsletter. And this was a picture they showed on looking north, and here's the yacht club, and here's their pier. And this was looking north. This would be Sands Key, if you look north. No, this is Ragged Key. No, it'd be the rest of the Ragged Keys, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, this was Elliott's Key, would be sand, but this would be looking north to another Ragged Key. Another picture of air view looking south from the clubhouse. And did you see there, I'm gonna have some more photos of these tiki huts and so forth that this guy built here on Islandia Yacht Club. And it's $25 a year to belong to it. Another picture. I don't know how they got this many big boats together, but they did somehow. And they call this a typical weekend crowd of Miamians at the club docks. This is their sandy beach that they'd pumped in and their typical tiki huts and so forth. All this is part of the Islandia Yacht Club. All of it out of that one newsletter. Ralph Fosse was into it at that particular time, pushing for keep the Islandia Yacht Club going and the proposals going. But the thing more or less dies out and never goes anywhere, because it does die out. In '69, they opened the Cartown Bridge. They actually had a bridge there in '67 and '68 now, but it was a low-level wooden, wasn't it? But
the original bridge was
yeah, it was wooden bridge.
washed out in the 35 hurricane.
Yeah. But this is the new one that we have now. Of course, this was a big thing for Ocean Reef. If you're familiar with Key Largo, Ocean Reef at that time, Ocean Reef hired a lot of its people from Homestead. And they had to drive down to mile marker 106, come up back up 905, and to get into Ocean Reef Country Club, as well as the Key Largo Anglers Club. When we opened the Cartown Bridge, they could travel, and the Ocean Reefers could go up to shop in Homestead here. And it was a short distance now, and you could buy the passes for it was a toll road. These were toll roads. And Ocean Reef, you'd buy, we bought one of them. How many? 20 of them for something. You got a pretty good discount. Cost you about 69 cents, I think, instead of $1 to go across the bridge if you bought $20 worth of them. And of course, they would buy their maids and gardeners and people to take care of their roses and flowers and so forth. They would furnish them with these passbooks. So they'd be driving from Homestead here or Florida City or wherever they worked at for nothing. Well, it all ends when they create the Biscayne National Park. This is June 28, 1980. And we create another map that I found that has boundaries on it. I think the Key Largo Marine Sanctuary took over this part. They had a sanctuary before the National Marine Sanctuary. There was the Key Largo Marine Sanctuary. But this drives the nail. They took and bought the stuff, and Lancelot Jones and all the families, old key families, had to sell their property out. They got a halfway decent price for it. And Biscayne National Park took over and rules with an iron thumb today for Biscayne National Park. No refinery, no port, no causeway, no nothing. And that's about all I have. Leaving today's part of it, you know, I see people already knew I could have went ahead and told a little bit about how Biscayne Park and its influence on it. And some of the people, the homesteaders. Ellis Key was homesteaded. All of Ellis Key was homesteaded based on that bad, terrible survey. That had to be resurveyed and resurveyed and resurveyed on their homestead if they ever wanted to do anything with it. Because the stakes were hard to lay out. So that's my program that I put together a month ago, the slides. I would have done it different if I could get to the computer today, but what you see is what you got there.
She was an author of some environmental books. And then the guy next door was Stanley Purcell. And so we would chew the fat about these things every now and then, and I never took anything serious. But that was the core of the environmental movement got started in Coconut Grove with these people.
Well, if you really want to know more about Lord Miller in his book, Biscayne National Park, it almost wasn't. So he gives a detailed, almost day by day, week by week, through the book of how to, and he's the conservationist side. He's presenting both sides. He gives both sides of it, but he's really giving the conservation book. It's a good book if you're interested in Biscayne National Park and how to come into existence. It took a lot of people involved in Biscayne National Park becoming Biscayne National Park. And Danny Purcell was a big pusher up in the government for it. I don't know the other. He had somebody in the Senate. He had one of the senators, and I think Miller mentioned the federal senator that was backing on the Senate. Bob.
Were you able to locate the city charter for the city of
Never found it.
Pardon?
I never found it.
Well, I think it was, you know, it was created by ordinance in the Dade County Commission, but I think the charter was incorporated by reference.
I did find the name and the date of the Miami Dade. It was Dade County. Yeah. Metro Dade is what they were calling it.
Metro Dade.
So
see, they could do it in Dade County because Dade, since 1957, had home rule. And they didn't have to go to Tallahassee, whereas North Key Largo Beach had to go to Tallahassee and get a special act from the legislature.
And Dade County is still on the home rule, right? It's still on a charter type county as opposed to Monroe County. And Dade County can make its own rules as a home rule county. The city of North Key Largo Beach is very similar. A lot of people are talking about them and never did anything. They almost did, though, until 1974 when the Miami Herald took them over on, there was going to be 115,000 condos built on 905 if all of the development plans were. And Key West was irate that North Key Largo was going to be 3 times the size in population because there'd never be 115,000 people in Key Largo in those condos. There'd be people renting them out and managing them. But again, Fort Bougainvillea was the only one that made the effort. Did you have anything to do with the surveying of that?
Oh yeah, that's where I laid the whole thing out. Leonard Abbas and Fritz Scharenberg.
Post Bucky Scharenberg, right?
Post Bucky Scharenberg.
But in Monroe County, both buckets, where Nona had a house on them. Bud Post. I knew him, but I don't think he knew me. I know my brother was a plumber, Miami plumber. He was trying to get in on the plumbing contract before Fulton Beach. It's a good thing he did. That's what happened. Anything else? Bob, Jensen.
I think Ruth was the president of the Chamber of Commerce in 1967. I think Jack Levy preceded her. And I think Jack was probably the strongest local proponent of all this.
Jack Levy, of course, was a photographer.
Right. Well, he was probably, he worked for Eric, and he was probably working for CJ also.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, he did a lot of aerial photography.
I know of Jack Levy, Homestead, for aerial photography, postcard photography, and so forth that Jack Levy did. But we don't have any of those. I'm lucky we had to get Bob Harris here tonight and Bob Bowman.
There was another man in town that had a lot to do with this. It was, you had Redland Realty, his name was Cybers Plant. Yeah, I don't know if he's still alive.
He is.
He
had an office right here in the room.
And he was one of the property owners on Elliott Key, and you know, he was involved on the developer side.
It's a grandiose, project to happen. And the only thing they were offered was the scenic highway. That's the only thing I saw, except Ludwig. Ludwig was offering a huge port, 40 foot deep, the port was, 30-foot canal coming into it. And then the oil refinery come out in what Miller tells it real straight in the book, when they had finally found out what was really going to happen on that 18,000 acres that he built. It was going to be an oil refinery, and he being the super tanker, there was no super tankers at that time, it was all tankers, but he being the tanker, well, he tanked oil transport also. And he had hundreds and hundreds of big oil tankers and oil from Bolivia was aluminum stuff, bauxite and so forth. He handled this big bulk transport type stuff. A little bit could have done his part, but he built the thing over in Bahamas, and I wanted to find out the name of the one of them. He did not build this one, he built one. Freeport. That was by Ludwig. The refinery did happen, just didn't happen here. And I don't know, we can speculate what would have happened had he built. It was a huge refinery, and especially with the oil and the shipping prices that we see today, if we had a refinery here in your backyard, our backyard too, in our yard.
What happened with the bauxite coming in from Bolivia? I didn't understand that.
Well, Ludwig was just a big transporter for all kind of ores, different coal from wood stuff from Brazil, but bauxite from Colombia, I believe where it was, South America. He had anything that was liquid or composition. He didn't. I don't have any record of transporting what we call today the big containers. I didn't find any record of containers, of box machinery, or big machinery. It was all stuff that was mined, and in a way, oil is bumped out of the ground is mined.
Bulk carrier.
Bulk carrier, yeah, bulk carrier. And there is, I have a list of all the ships. It's about 5 pages long to the names of these ships. And he's a big ship converter. And his theory was, he would sell a contract for somebody, he would build his boat and use this contract. Somebody buy a contract to ship for 5 years. Or this, let's say. He'd get a 5-year contract and have a boat. He would then build a boat and do it for free and then the contract for 5 years. And then the contract would lapse, he'd have the boat. And he did it thousands times in it with thousands of boats. And the fellow here explains the way the money manipulation that he had. Not a thief now, he just stealing money, didn't renege on any of his contract. His goal was to make sure his contract worked, so he would have the boat back in his name that he now had a lien on the company. contractors. And the contractors then would relieve of all this stuff of maintaining boats, and the oil would just show up at Baton Rouge, where it was going to go to. Well, thanks a lot. Enjoy being part of the history now.
Thank you.
Let's go by here.
Enough room for a few comments.